FTR. Could FTR have two managers in All Elite Wrestling? Now, FTR are a very interesting tag team, very interesting concept going on right now in AEW. Now, last week, FTR signed their official contract with AEW. Before that, they had been legitimately working on a per appearance deal. They hadn't signed AEW contracts or anything like that. They were very open about actually when they made their AEW debut that we haven't signed anything. We're just kind of feeling it out. We might want to go to other companies. We might want to do other things in other promotions. We've just come out of being tied down to one company. It sounds like a relationship, doesn't it? But they did actually use that simile and compared it to a long-term relationship. They said, look, we've just come out of a long-term deal with WWE and being signed exclusively to one company like WWE. We're not sure if we're ready right now to fully commit to signing a long-term deal with just one company again. But their minds have changed. I think obviously the working relationship that they have with AEW, they're very happy with. But also, look, there aren't many options of where to go at the moment due to the pandemic. It isn't as if FTR can work the indies for a while and just see how they feel and feel things out. Obviously, they could go to Impact. They could maybe verbally agree a deal with Japan, but they can't travel to Japan for a while. So their options are kind of limited in that sense. But they've officially signed a contract with AEW. So last week on Dynamite, they had a segment in which FTR signed their new AEW contracts, but they brought in a legendary tag team competitor, to assist them and advise them on their contract signing, and that was none other than the enforcer himself, Arn Anderson. Now, FTR also had special clauses put into their contracts. I think in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Tag Team Appreciation Night on AEW Dynamite. They also talked about ensuring that tag ropes are on all AEW rings going forward. I'm not sure if they actually were officially on there. They might have been. I can't recall off the top of my head, but they will be going forward, and use of tag team ropes will be mandatory in all tag team matches going forward, which is a massive plus to me. It's a massive bugbear of mine when I see anyone in a tag team match not holding the tag rope when they tag in someone, and the whole blind tag thing and all that sort of stuff really pees me off. So good to see that AEW finally implementing that, actually having some psychology in some of their tag team matches, which is great. And they signed their deals, FTR did, with All Elite Wrestling. And then after they signed the deals, in came Hangman Page, one half of the current AEW World Tag Team Champions with Kenny Omega, came in, shared whiskey with FTR, Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler. They offered it to Arn, but Arn politely declined. And this is kind of teasing the potential friendship, stable, whatever, between Hangman Page and FTR. We saw them drinking together a couple of weeks ago in that AEW bar. I'm assuming there's like an AEW bar in Daly's Place, because all of these bar segments, however long they've been, or whether it was Private Party, whether it was Hangman Page, whether it's FTR, it's always shot in the same bar. So I'm assuming that the Khan family have some form of, small bar facility at Daly's Place. I wouldn't be surprised. They've got everything else there, especially at that Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium. We saw it during the Stadium Stampede, didn't we? They've got a swimming pool, they've got a bow, they've got all of this sort of stuff. It's crazy. So FTR would also make the save later on in the evening last week on AEW Dynamite, as Hangman Page was being attacked by the Dark Order after he and Kenny Omega had defended the AEW World Tag Team Championships against Stu Grayson and Evil Uno. The Dark Order were attacking him, or going to attack the tag team of Kenny Omega and Hangman Page after the match, but FTR made the save. So I would keep your eye on the FTR and Hangman Page relationship, because I think that's going to be something potentially going forward, and we'll touch on this in a second. But also in other news, since FTR have now officially signed their AEW contracts, they have officially entered the AEW Tag Team Rankings. This was the whole point, in storyline purposes, of AEW officially signing an AEW contract, FTR rather signing an AEW contract, was because they were winning these matches and they were having these tag team matches, but they weren't being officially ranked in the rankings. Their matches weren't counting as anything, and the reason that they played that off was because they hadn't yet signed official contracts with AEW. So now that they've entered the AEW Tag Team Rankings with a record of 5-0, 5 wins and 0 losses. They are the top of the AEW Tag Team Rankings. So I think they'll face the Tag Team Champions Kenny Omega and Hangman Page in the near future. Where is that going to happen? Look, we just don't know. It could happen at on AEW Dynamite. It could happen at All Out. I'll let you know my thoughts on that in a second. It could potentially happen on Dynamite in the next few weeks. And the reason I say that is because recently, look, we've seen so many tag team title matches on Dynamite, whether it was the Dark Order, whether it's against the Natural Nightmares, whether it was against Private Party, Best Friends, whoever. There have been a ton of tag team title matches recently on Dynamite, so I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was FTR versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. I think that's certainly a possibility, and I don't think that will happen at All Out because I think they might have other plans for All Out. Especially when you factor in FTR's relationship or potential relationship with Hangman Page. Now, FTR at the moment, they're still being portrayed as babyfaces in AEW, but I don't know about you, I just feel that even though they're portraying themselves as babyfaces, they don't feel like true babyfaces at the moment. Deep down, somewhere inside, you think, I think a heel turn's coming. I can't put my finger on when, how, where, or anything like that, but I just feel a heel turn is coming soon. I mean, it has to be, right? Unless they go in the complete opposite direction of it. Hangman Page arguably is one of the most popular babyfaces on the roster. I think initially when we had this change in Hangman Page's character earlier on in the year, when he distanced himself from the Elite, when he became a darker, more evil version. Not even evil, he just started drinking more. I was going to say evil then. He wasn't even really ever became a heel. He just said, I'm not going to be with the Elite anymore and I'm going to start drinking. And it made him into one of the biggest baby faces on the roster, certainly the most popular wrestler with some of the crowd reactions and receptions every single week, and having the beers from the crowd. Couldn't do that anymore. Not just because there's no crowd, but can you think they have to disinfect every single cup? So perhaps they go in the complete opposite direction and they have FTR and Hangman Page as the baby faces here and the Elite turn heel. Right, we've seen that Kenny Omega, this heel turn for Kenny Omega has been teased the last few weeks. A couple of weeks ago on Dynamite, he attacked Marco Stunt, poor little Marco Stunt, after the match had finished that he was in, and the bell had already rang, and then Kenny Omega just started beating the hell out of Marco Stunt. That's such a heel move. So that, to me, might as well have been a heel turn there. I know since then, it hasn't been officially a heel turn. He's still tagging with Hangman Page and doing all of that stuff. But that was pretty much a heel turn. That's an indicator, look, Kenny Omega, the cleaner, the heel version of the cleaner that was so successful and so captivating and just such a great character in New Japan Pro Wrestling, looks to be coming to AEW soon. And that was the indicator of that. So I think also you have to factor into that. So the fact that Kenny Omega is going to be turning heel very soon, it feels like. To me, this is why I think that the FTR versus Omega and Hangman Page will happen on Dynamite. I feel, and I think, look, the Young Bucks and FTR, we're going to get that at some point. Ever since FTR made their debut in AEW, that was the match that was teased. That's the match everyone wants to see. FTR team with the Bucks at Fyter Fest. It's the dream match, right? That's the dream match everyone wants. So we know we're getting the Young Bucks and FTR at some point. I think they're saving that for their biggest show of the year, which of course is All Out on September 5th, I believe it is. So that would suggest that we're going to get FTR versus Hangman Page and Omega before that, probably on a Dynamite in the next few weeks. So maybe instead of FTR being the ones to turn heel, maybe Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks turn heel, and FTR and Hangman are the babyfaces in this feud between Omega and the Bucks, or the Elite, and FTR and Hangman. Maybe that's the case that we're going to see there. Of course, the Elite, being Omega and the Young Bucks, for a period of time were heels in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So it's certainly a possibility in the near future that we have Omega and the Bucks being the heels and FTR and Hangman being the cool baby faces. It's definitely a possibility there. So going back to their managers, I know I was on a bit of a tangent there, but going back to the potential managers of FTR, so we saw that Arn Anderson, the Enforcer, is associated with FTR after their contract signing. However, it doesn't stop there. Last night on AEW Dark, FTR had another tag team match, which of course they won, 5-0 their record is. However, accompanying them, easy for me to say, to the ring for this match, this time, wasn't Arn Anderson, it in fact was Tully Blanchard. Now, in recent weeks on AEW Dynamite, we have seen Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard in the crowd scouting, I guess you could call it, FTR during their tag team matches. You had Arn sitting behind Tully. Tully was sitting there. I mentioned this a few times. Tully Blanchard has this just great look of sitting in the crowd. He doesn't wear a mask. He sort of wears one of those sort of bandanas over his face, which they absolutely should. I mean, they're high risk, and, let's just not get started on that. You know my thoughts on all of that sort of stuff. But him sitting in the crowd, thinking, scouting, having this sort of bandana over his mouth or over his face, just looked so cool. So cool. He looked like such like a Bond villain, just proper Western villain. It just looked great. I thought that look is just awesome. Regardless of the pandemic, if he just had that anyway, I think he just looked so cool. I think it just looks great. So, obviously, as I mentioned, in recent weeks, we've seen Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard in the crowd scouting FTR. FTR, Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood have also gone on record saying that they would only allow 3 guys in all of professional wrestling to manage them as a tag team. One of them is Jim Cornette, and I think the likelihood of Jim Cornette appearing in AEW is about as likely as me beating Mark Henry in an arm wrestling contest, so that's not going to happen. And the other 2 men they said that they would allow to manage them would be Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, which of course looks to be what we're getting. We've seen Arn and Tully scouting them. Now we've seen FTR associated with both of them. So we're seeing this relationship with Arn, and we've seen this relationship with Tully too when it comes to FTR. And of course, why is that important? Well, of course, Arn and Tully, they're tag team specialists. They're, when you think of Arn Anderson, of course you think of the likes of Ric Flair and all this sort of stuff, but you think of Tully Blanchard, members of the Four Horsemen. They tag team a million times in Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, NWA. Of course, they were the Brainbusters in WWE too. FTR in recent weeks have also used their finish, the Spike Piledriver finish in AEW, which I'll be completely honest, the first time FTR did that Spike Piledriver finish, it was awful. It was really bad during their debut appearance on AEW, but it's got a lot snugger over the weeks that's gone on. I'm just sure they probably weren't allowed to do it in WWE because piledrivers are a big no-no unless you're The Undertaker. So it's got a lot better, and of course that was the Brainbusters finish. So they've always been paying homage to Arn and Tully in all of their matches. And also as well, FTR were compared, they compared themselves, and a lot of analysts and people on social media, fans of professional wrestling, compared FTR, the Revival, whatever, to Arn and Tully when they were wrestling in WWE. I think even Vince McMahon himself not said it to FTR as a criticism, but said, you're trying to be to Arn and Tully. Why you, people say you're the next Arn and Tully, blah, blah, blah. So the comparison's always been there between FTR and the Brainbusters, Arn and Tully, whatever you want to call them. Right? Because FTR, back in the WWE, their old name, they were the Revival. And that whole point was about the revival of tag team wrestling, tag team psychology, cutting the ring off and secluding your opponent, having both members of the team working over one opponent, use of the tag team ropes, use of tag team psychology, distracting the referee while the other tag team partner did his work, cheating, double team moves, all of that classic stuff that you associate and love about tag team wrestling. That's what FTR did and does so well. That's why they were compared to the likes of classic tag teams. That's what FTR did. FTR based themselves on classic tag teams like Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, like the Midnight Express, like the Rock and Roll Express, Power and Glory, Demolition, LOD, whatever. That's what FTR did. That's what the Revival was all about, and that's what they're still about as FTR today in AEW. So could a tag team in AEW have tag team managers? I think that's an interesting concept. I don't think it's one that's been particularly done before. We've seen people have like 2 managers, right? Yokozuna and WWE had Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette. But in terms of a tag team, usually a tag team will just have the one manager, right? You think of the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering, etc. But a tag team having a tag team of managers, I think, is quite an interesting concept and something that I don't think we should dismiss right away. I think that's quite interesting, actually. So it certainly is possible. Now, Arn Anderson, currently in All Elite Wrestling, is the coach, manager, whatever you want to call it, of the TNT champion Cody Rhodes. He's also, his title is the head coach of the Nightmare Family. He's always got his, what Chris Jericho would call his Waffle House menu, that sort of whiteboard or bit of laminated card with all of the tactics on, a bit like a American football coach. I always laugh when Chris Jericho calls it his Waffle House menu. That always tickles me. So Arn Anderson is currently a coach in AEW. Tully Blanchard is currently the coach of Shawn Spears. Shawn Spears and Cody were best friends turned rivals, right? Sean Spears coming into AEW was because of Cody and his relationship with Cody. However, Sean Spears turned on Cody. I think it was at Fyter Fest last year, smashed him over the head with the steel chair, cut Cody open. They had the feud, which actually introduced Tully Blanchard to AEW, and they had the match between Cody and Sean Spears at last year's All Out pay-per-view, which Cody won. And then Sean Spears has gone on to do absolutely nothing of any relevance ever since then. I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh, but it's the truth. He's done nothing of any purpose since then. I think he had a feud with Joey Janela that went to Full Gear last year. Recently, he had a match with Dustin Rhodes at Double or Nothing, which was a complete washout. He got stripped down to his underwear. His underwear even had a picture of Tully Blanchard on the crotch. It was just terrible. It was terrible. And again, I like to try and be not biased and not favour one company over the other and just call things how I see it. And look, if that Dustin Rhodes Sean Spears match was done in WWE and that comedy was done in WWE, people would be hating all over it. And it deserves the same treatment in AEW. I hated it. I thought that match was just awful. I'm trying my best not to curse here because it was terrible. It just wasn't good and it was just a waste of time, really. Since then, Sean Spears has got the blackjack glove, the old black glove that you can load up with weights and all of that sort of stuff that the Blackjacks had, and Barry Windham had, and all that sort of stuff. So that's his gimmick at the moment. We haven't really seen much of that. We've seen a bit of it on AEW Dark, but again, Sean Spears not doing anything of much relevance at the moment. But potentially this alignment of Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson with FTR factors into a possible foundation and formation of a Four Horsemen faction in AEW. Now, we've spoken at length about a potential AEW Four Horsemen stable on this channel. The video's out there, so we'll put a link to it in the description box below. I'm sure I'll put a card on the screen as well. So we've spoken about that before, and that group could potentially consist of Cody, Spears, and FTR with Arn and Tully as the managers. You've got two members of the original Four Horsemen there in Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA and WCW, in Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. And they could be the ones making a 2020 version of that faction in AEW. Because if you look at how the pieces could potentially come together now with all of these wrestlers, the pieces are there. It's just a case of putting them together, really. You've got Arn Anderson, the coach of Cody. He brings Cody into that faction, and Cody would be the de facto leader, right? He's the biggest star in there. Tully Blanchard is the manager, coach of Sean Spears, so he brings Sean Spears into that group as the sort of mid-card guy, I would guess, like the lackey. If you're going to beat anyone in that group, you'd beat Sean Spears. And then Arn and Tully, both managing and coaching FTR, they bring the tag team into that group. The tag team, of course, in the Four Horsemen was always Arn and Tully too. So they bring that in, and you've got the Four Horsemen of AEW, and you've got the new faction there. So the pieces are certainly there. And also, in addition to this, Cody, Sean Spears, and FTR have teased a possible Four Horsemen on social media. They sometimes will just put the Roman numerals for four. Sometimes you've seen on camera, Cody's held up the four fingers, the sign of the Four Horsemen. FTR have also done that. Sean Spears, again, has teased it on social media too. So they're playing with the fans a bit. Is it confirmed? No, it might just be a rumour at this point. You've had the likes of Ric Flair comment on it in interviews too. They've asked him, what is your opinion on potentially having a Four Horsemen group in AEW? Of course, Flair is the leader, with the creator of the Four Horsemen, even though Arn Anderson actually came up with the name of the Four Horsemen. Ric Flair's given it his seal of approval, said, look, if that's what they want to do, then more power to him. He's friends, of course, with Arn and Tully, and thinks it would be great. And if Flair is aware of it and Flair's given it the green light, it probably means that they've asked him, and you would still ask his permission or discuss it with him, right? That seems the right thing to do. So if Flair's talking about it potentially happening, then I think we can expect something of Four Horsemen style to happen in the future in AEW. So the pieces are there. Like I said, the pieces are there. It makes sense. In terms of Cody, because I think it would have to be a heel group, Cody, to me, is feeling more and more like a heel as the weeks go on, right? He's doing press-ups in his matches, which the commentators always make reference of, like they're being produced to, because that's an important story beat and an important seed to plant in this eventual Cody heel turn, which I think we are going to get at some point. He's just got slight heelish mannerisms, and a lot of the people he's facing in these TNT Championship Open Challenge matches have been babyfaces. whether it is Jungle Boy, whether it is Mark Quinn, Sonny Kiss, Warhorse, whoever, he's having those heel mannerisms. Not all the time, because you can't, smack people in the face with it. It's more of a subtle storytelling that they're trying to do at the moment. But I think a Cody heel turn is coming, right? He's the current TNT champion. He promised if he lost to Chris Jericho at Full Gear for the AEW World Championship, he wouldn't compete for the AEW World title again, which he's held up so far. That promise is still relevant. But if he's a heel, if he turns heel, he can just say, look, screw it. I'm an executive vice president of AEW. Promises don't mean a damn thing. What means money is me being the AEW World Champion. I can make the rules here. The very same way that I can make a promise, I can break a promise. So if he becomes a heel, it opens up a potential AEW World Championship run for Cody, which I think is an inevitability. People will say about, booking yourself to become world champion, etc. and etc. All of that sort of stuff. But look, Cody's a big star for AEW. He's good in the ring. He's good on the mic. He looks like a star. The reaction he gets from the crowd, it feels like a main event player and a star. So I think he will be a world champion in AEW one day, and I think it's just a matter of time, really. Look, at the moment, Cody is perfect for the TNT Championship. The bout is new, even though it's unfinished, but the bout is new. The title is new. It needs to be given some credibility, and how do you have that? You have one of the biggest stars in the company hold the championship. So that's why Cody is the first TNT champion. Not only does it give him something to do, but it gives the championship credibility, introduces it in the best way possible, having a big star hold it and be its first champion. But eventually, it will become what it's intended to be, the TNT championship, and that's a mid-card title. Mid-card guys or guys trying to make their way to the main event will become the TNT champion. It's the perfect title for a Darby Allin, Ricky Starks, etc. That kind of people trying to get to the next level. Rey Fenix. I could go on and on. Sammy Guevara. So that's the type of person that will eventually become the TNT champion. But at the moment, Cody's the perfect guy for the TNT championship. But eventually, as I mentioned, that title will become a mid-card title, and Cody will move on to the AEW World Championship and the main event scene. It's just a matter of not if, but when. But will that be with FTR and Shawn Spears as part of the Four Horsemen group with Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson? It's an interesting time. It'll be interesting to see what happens with FTR and Arn and Tully going forward. I'm interested in the prospect of a tag team having tag team managers. I think it's something really interesting, and I'm sure we'll find out more on AEW Dynamite tonight. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on FTR potentially having two managers in Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard? What are your thoughts? Should he just have Arn? Should he have Tully? Should they have both? Does this plant the seeds for a potential Four Horsemen stable in AEW in the near future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. I really enjoy interacting with you guys on this channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give us a like. It really does help us out on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feed. So if you have enjoyed it, please do give us a like. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're on the road to 700 subscribers at the moment, on that long road to 1,000 subscribers. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be doing a lot more live streams, watch alongs, reactions, all of that fun stuff to Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, Impact Wrestling, pay-per-views, you name it, we'll do it. Once we get to that 1,000 subscriber mark, it's just a lot easier in terms of the streaming situation to do that then. So the quicker we get there, we can do some really fun stuff. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. If you have, just know that I really do appreciate it. I appreciate anyone that has subscribed to this channel or just watches and listens to these videos and interacts with them. It's very humbling, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.